Hey, what's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. Today, we're doing a deep dive analysis video into the U.S. Open Men's 2024 final between Jannik Sinner and Taylor Fritz. If you want to see how this match was won, stay tuned. It's coming up next. If you haven't seen one of our deep dive analysis videos before, I'm going to go deep into this using Dartfish 10 Pro S software. We're going to look at it point by point and show you some things that you don't see on the TV broadcast. So the first thing that we're going to talk a little bit about here is points won by rally length. And that just means who won the points or what percentage of points were played, during the shorter points and the longer points of the match. So if you look at 1 to 4 shot points, 62% of the points in this match were 1 to 4 shots. 5 to 8 shot points were 18% of the points in this match. 9 to 12 shot points were 11% of the points in this match. And 13 plus shot points were 10% of the points played in this match. So we actually had 21% of the points that were extended rally lengths. That means 9 plus shots and above. So we had quite a few long rallies in this match, while also, though, having quite a few short ones, 1 to 4. Again, 62% of the points played were there. So I wasn't sure if we would see a lot of the longer points, with Fritz maybe being not as strong of a mover as some of the other players from the past Slam finals that we've covered, but he moved well enough here and had quite a few extended length points with Sinner in this match. So besides the rally lengths, the next thing we want to get into is serve and return a serve, and specifically second serve returns in this match. So if we look at the stats and we take the court and divide it into 3 vertical sections, right? We have cross court, we have the middle third of the court, and then we have down the line as the right third of the court. We can see that Sinner actually hit 62% of his return of serves on second serves right at the server down the middle third of the court. 24% of his return of serves were hit cross court, and just 14% of second serve returns hit down the line. Let's look at the use of the middle third tactic on the return of serve and show you why it's so valuable for the #1 player in the world. So before we break it down, we're going to let it play once in real time. We got Fritz serving on the far side right, Sinner returning. There's that middle third return really deep. Fritz hits it back. There's a backhand back, forehand inside in down the line, and then the air from Fritz, right? So let's go ahead now. We'll break this down and slow it down, because when you're playing it in real time, it's really tough to kind of tell what's going on. So again, Fritz serving on the far side right here. We got Sinner returning on the near side right here. Let's break it down. Second serve situation. We can see the obvious second serve just by the way that Fritz is arching the back just a little bit more on his second serve. You can see the second serve is going to be coming in this situation. We know he's going to do, a kick serve primarily there. And then his contact here definitely gives away a kick serve contact. Tends to toss it a little far back, not far behind him in terms of front to back, but the left to right, you can see there a little bit more kind of close to over the head in terms of the left to right space. And then just from that position, comes through, kicks it in, and he hits it right in the middle third to Jannik here. One thing we know is Sinner, and one thing that we saw is he'll vary his return to serve position. So here we can see Sinner is in and taking this from just inside the baseline in what I like to call zone number 3. Okay. And the ATP now is tracking their analytics and using the same zone system that we started using 10 years ago. So we're in good company, because the insights company for ATP is using the same zonal system. But inside here, baseline is zone 3. We notice when we take second serves or even first serves from here, Sinner's really going to shorten up his backswing, right? On the return, can't use much of a backswing because he's close to Fritz and he doesn't have much space between him and Taylor. So he doesn't have a lot of time to take a big swing even on a second serve. So he's taking it early from zone 3, does a really good job of hitting the return deep into Fritz's side into zone 3. And if you're not familiar with the zone system that I use, basically what it's going to consist of is service line to net is zone 1. Service line to 3/4 court is zone 2. 3/4 court to the baseline is zone 3. Baseline to about halfway to the back fence or wall here is going to be zone 4. And then halfway from the wall back to the back wall in the back there will be zone number 5. So we're tracking where the balls are landing as far as 1, 2, or 3 zones. And then we're also tracking where the player is hitting the ball from. So right now, Fritz is in zone 4 receiving that forehand. All of that's being tracked with the analytics here. So Fritz goes inside out and ends up hitting short. So the return for Sinner, right? taking it early from here. The goal is, again, to take away Fritz's time, try to get deep to the middle third of the court. He doesn't want to open up any potential angles for Fritz by hitting down the line here or hitting cross, because if he doesn't hit them well, Fritz will punish him to the open court here or go back behind here. So again, hits really deep, zone 3 ball on Fritz's side, forces Taylor onto his back foot. Once Fritz goes on the back foot, the idea is for Sinner to gain an advantage in the point and do some damage, and he does that. Fritz hits short here. Sinner goes pretty hard cross. Not getting depth on this particular backhand, but just kind of racking this hard cross, trying to force an error from Fritz or a short ball. Fritz ends up hitting short here to the middle third. And then Sinner again down the line. This time again, zone 3 depth. So getting the ball close to the baseline, really trying to force Fritz into error situations, or again, hitting short balls where Sinner can step up and do some serious damage. Fritz goes middle and then misses long. But it all started again, right? With the deep return. Sinner starting from behind the baseline, but ending up inside the baseline a little bit here in zone 3, just trying to get this deep. So again, one of the biggest secrets on the tour level is really the use of return of serves, first and seconds, that are hit to the middle third of the court, the biggest part of the court, the meat of the court. The easiest area to hit to a lot of times is where guys are taking their return of serve, because the server's landing inside the court and they're trying to jam the server up and force errors or force weak shots on the next ball that they can take advantage of in the point, and that's what Sinner did right here. Let's move on to the second point now. All right, so before we break the second one down, let's let it play once in real time. Fritz serving, second again, middle third return from Sinner, runs that backhand down. Fritz cranks a backhand. Jannik, really good depth. And then Fritz makes the forehand error there, right? So let's go back just to the beginning here again. Fritz serving far side, Sinner near side. Second serve from Fritz. This one is a slice, again, landing in the middle third of this service box. He's trying to curl it into Sinner's hip to try to jam him a little bit on this one. So he's not going for the kick serve on the second serve. It's more of a slice, trying to force a shorter return that Fritz can get aggressive with. Sinner, same thing as before, right? So we notice Jannik starting back behind the baseline, moving forward, and then he's taking the ball just a little bit inside the baseline, technically zone 3 with his contact point here. Again, what Sinner does is when you're taking balls early on the return, really shortens up the backswing, almost no backswing, takes it out in front for contact, and the goal is either to hit a big pace or get depth. Depth is usually more important because it usually causes a little bit more of the short balls to come back to your side. But Sinner accidentally hits this ball a little bit shorter, right? Lands in zone 1, which means Fritz on the other side, we can see Fritz is actually going to step forward and step into the backhand. And because Fritz is delivering his weight forward, he has a chance to actually get aggressive on this one compared to the first point, where when Sinner hit the return, right, he hit it deep into zone 3 and backed Fritz up. This time, Fritz is stepping forward and delivering his weight into the ball, so he has a good chance to get aggressive because his weight's going forward like a boxer going into a punch, okay? So he goes big aggression there, cross, not super deep, but he's moving Sinner from one side of the court to the other. And a lot of times when we're just moving a guy from one side here to the other side like this, we don't necessarily have to hit deep to force them to hit short. It's not required. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you don't have to. A lot of times they'll still hit short. So Sinner goes over, covers this nicely with his backhand. I really love how Sinner, too, for a big guy, right? 6'3". I know he's lanky, but he's tall. 6'3" at this point, maybe a little bit more than that. But feet are super wide, super low base on the run, really drops his hips down and uses his legs. And we can see Sinner, again, not hitting super deep. This one lands in zone 2. This might be a chance for Fritz to get aggressive again. And Fritz does. And this time when Fritz gets aggressive, he gets a little bit better depth than he did on his previous shot. We'll see what Jannik does here. Sinner changes the direction. He doesn't like the pattern. So he decides he's going to loop the ball a little bit over the net and go for depth. And again, because he's moving Fritz from one side of the court to the other side of the court, a lot of times when you do that, you can force errors or short balls. But let's see what happens to Fritz here. And we got Fritz, right? Definitely off balance, uncomfortable in this situation. You can see Taylor here is reaching for the ball, so he's pretty uncomfortable again, too, with the depth that Sinner hit on that shot. So we go from there, and then Taylor nets that ball. The mistake Fritz made on this particular shot is Jannik ends up hitting this ball right here super deep close to the baseline. And Fritz is behind the baseline right now, but doesn't back up enough while he's moving to his right to receive that ball and make it a little bit easier to receive. He ends up trying to take it super early here before the apex of the ball and then nets it right into the net right there. Let's move on to the third point now. All right, so let's jump into the third point now. We'll notice something that Sinner did quite a bit different in the second set versus the first set on first and second serve returns. This is a second serve return again, right? So look at where Sinner is. We can barely see him back here. He's in what I call zone 5, right? So we went over the zones a little bit before. Halfway from the baseline, back from the baseline to the back fence is zone 5. So Sinner's got himself planted back here, and he changed his tactics up quite a bit. And the reason I think he changed his return to serve position, besides giving Fritz a different look, was just trying to give himself more time to react to Fritz's next shot after the return of serve, because Fritz was hitting pretty big balls to both sides, and Sinner was having some trouble covering some of those shots. So let's let this play once in real time before we break it down. Kick to the backhand, middle return, Fritz aggressive, Sinner hitting a little short there. There's one a little bit deeper, Fritz aggressive deep, Jannik back and forth, and then there's the air from Fritz on the backhand. Let's go ahead and break the third point down now. All right, so again, Sinner, deep, zone 5 return position. Fritz hitting a second serve here, kicks it in towards the backhand side. Sinner receiving it again from really far back in zone 5. Now, if you're going to do this, you're going to receive from back in this position. One of the keys to have an effective return usually is trying to get big depth on the shot. You're trying to give yourself more time to swing at the ball by standing this far back from the server. So you're trying to make sure you get depth on most of these returns. If you hit really short, you could be in a lot of trouble. It just depends what the skills are of the server and what they can do with the next ball. So this ball's decently deep, but Fritz moves around to spank the forehand, right? We can see him really loading up for the forehand, and he takes it down the line with a lot of pace. Sinner really made the effort to improve his movement and his court coverage, in the last year. So he's gotten a lot better at moving from one side of the court to the other side of the court and minimizing the amount of damage that the player can do to him from these deeper positions. So he hits that ball on the run, goes down the line, which is pretty risky because now the percentage play is for Fritz to go cross court pretty simply, pretty comfortably if he wants to, right? With Sinner standing over on this side. Fritz does take the cross court. It's not very deep, but sometimes when a player like Sinner was just standing really far behind the baseline over here, right? Sometimes when a guy's standing that far back, taking the shorter angle can be a really effective play in terms of getting them to make a mistake or hit short. So Sinner here does a very good job of avoiding that. He hits very deep on this side, hits a good zone 3 ball to Fritz's backhand. And then Fritz, though, responds really, really well. So, again, Sinner comes up with a good deep ball here, but Fritz responds with his own zone 3 deep ball back to Jannik's backhand. Sinner, quite a few feet behind the baseline at this point, not quite zone 5, but he's still pretty far back. And then he hits deep, and then Fritz nets that air. So Sinner had to come up with a couple of deep backhands in a row, starting with this one on the move right here, and then had to hit the second backhand deep here and get Fritz to try to take that ball early. And when Fritz tried to take that ball on the rise, he made the mistake into the net on accident. But I like that Sinner really started to vary his return to serve position in the first set, again, taking all the second serves primarily from zone 3 inside the baseline. As the second set happened, he started to back up into zone 5 to give himself more time to react, but also to give Fritz different looks on the return. And before we get into the fourth point, I want to talk about something called big and small targets. So I'm just going to look at the screen here real quick and tell you about big and small targets. It's something I started tracking in 2014. I wanted to find out how close to the sidelines of the court the best players in the world played. So I started a research project and started tracking everything through match play like this with the top players in the world at that time and have continued to do it through to this day. So small targets, we can see those shaded in the red area. Small targets or 2 or less feet away from the single sideline right here on both sides of the court. And then anything landing in between those areas here is considered to be a big target. And a big target is more than 2 feet inside the single sideline from all the way from the net all the way to the back of the court. So in this match, we had some really interesting big and small target numbers. And the big and small target numbers don't include serving. It's every shot after the serve. But the numbers that we saw in this match were big targets for Sinner were 88% of his shots. And small targets for Sinner were 12% of his shots. For Fritz, big targets were 91% of his shots, and small targets were 9% of his shots. So in this match, Sinner was the one who actually took a little bit more risk playing towards the sidelines than Fritz did as far as the balls he made in the court. With the big and small target percentages and the idea of that in mind, let's take a look at some of the points now. All right, so before I get into the fourth point now, right, with the big and small targets, let's let it play once in real time. Sinner serving here on the near side, right to the body. Fritz, big hard return. Exchanges some forehands here back and forth. Fritz with the backhand, Sinner inside out forehand. Deep from Fritz, really good ball. Forehand cross, Sinner back cross. And then Fritz makes the error when he stretched out wide. Let's break this point down now, guys. All right, so again, Sinner serving near side, Fritz returning far side. Second serve situation, right at the body. Fritz trying to get out of the way of the ball to hit the forehand. Fritz was a little bit jammed on that particular forehand, so we just look at his space. He tried to make space right here, right? So you can see him trying to make space and get around the ball. Just a little bit jammed, in my opinion, on this particular return, which caused the ball to go just a little bit short. Was he jammed by a lot? No, he was jammed by a little, and that's enough for that return to land short, which gives Sinner the chance to possibly attack. Sinner doesn't have to back up much, if at all, in this situation, so he's loading up his forehand, getting ready to attack. And he hits a really hard deep ball here, zone 3. Again, we're looking for depth at this level on a lot of shots because we're trying to force errors or force short balls. Fritz loaded up, ready to hit. Rolls the ball down the line. So that ball from Sinner did a little bit of damage to Fritz. And what I mean by that is he forced Fritz, instead of hitting more of a ball that was driving, he forced Fritz to have to roll up with topspin on the ball because he was taking that ball early and was a little uncomfortable. So he forced him to do that to try not to make the mistake. And when that happens and you have to roll up on a ball, that gives Sinner a chance here to dance and move around the ball and try to spank a forehand on the next shot. And that's exactly what happened. So we'll watch Sinner move around here, takes the forehand inside out cross, pretty deep, not quite zone 3, probably back of zone 2 there, but Fritz really moved back. Look at the trail of Fritz's footwork, really moving back and behind the baseline to receive that shot there. Fritz hits again short here, middle third of the court, zone 1. Sinner looking for more forehands. And because that Fritz backhand was pretty darn short in zone 1, and especially in the middle of the court, it gives Sinner an easy opportunity to move around with his body and try to crank the forehand here again. And he does that. And you can see Sinner does a very good job here. It's very tempting, right? The lower the levels get, whether it's amateur level, local high school level, college level, it's very tempted to paint the sidelines here, these red areas of the court, and hit small targets over and over again. And Sinner gets close to hitting a small target here, but he still hits a big target well within the sideline, but's able to move Fritz and get him on the run and get him uncomfortable. And we have to remember that you can use big targets very effectively while still hitting angles and getting people moving off the court. And that forces Fritz on the run. But Fritz, very solid backhand, doesn't break down very easily, hits very deep here himself to zone 3 and gets Sinner to back up a little bit. Sinner ends up accidentally hitting short down the line right here, but that's going to move Fritz from this side of the court over to this side, so we'll see what Fritz can come up with. Reaching a little bit here. Footwork could have been a little bit better this forehand, but Fritz is reaching for this ball, so because he's reaching, I'm expecting a ball that's a little bit shorter than the court. We'll see what he does with it. Not bad. Back of zone 2 area right here, cross court. We'll see what Sinner responds with. Sinner takes the opportunity this time to hit the shorter angle. This is very close again to a small target, but it's not quite a small target. He's still hitting a short angle off the court, and we'll see if he can do enough damage to Fritz here to cause the error. We got Fritz sliding out to that forehand wide right. He's out into the alley at this point, so he's got to come up with a really good shot. From this position, once we get out into the alley with both feet like this, if we don't hit a really good quality ball either here or here, it's going to be pretty high percentage for our opponent to potentially take their next shot to the open court here. So Fritz has to do something with this shot right here. Tries to force that and then makes the mistake. But Sinner, very good job here during this entire point, using big targets, right? Doing plenty of damage as soon as he went with one that landed a little closer to the small target area. But again, still big target, probably 3 feet inside the sideline. And then as this played out, You can see he creates another angle still with a big target, right? Not quite a small target. And then that ball forces the air. Let's move on to the next point now. All right, so let's let this one play once in real time before we break it down. We've got center here serving far side on the ad side. T-serve, Fritz, really good stretch on the return. Deep shot there, deep ball back again. Fritz, decent backhand, but left it in the middle a little bit. And then center goes small target down the line to finish that up. Let's go ahead and break this down now, guys, real quick. Center again, serving on the far side, ad side. Big first serve down the tee. And notice here, too, that a lot of times we think we've got to paint the lines with our serves, right, to force weak returns or hit good serves. He's well within that center line right there and still gets Fritz really stretched, right? Look at Fritz. He's a big guy. He's got a lot of wingspan, but he's off balance, stretching and reaching here with a serve that didn't land right on the line. So it's important to remember, yes, you do want serves that land on the line, but it's not absolutely necessary to force weaker or stretching returns like this. So Fritz does an incredible job of finding zone 3 depth on the full stretch. It's very good balance that did that for him. And center does a very good job while he's backing up of trying not to hit short off of Fritz's deep return. And he rolls up on the ball, lots of topspin, and finds zone 3 depth to try to neutralize Fritz here. Fritz cranks the next ball. Again, zone 3 depth, big rip on the forehand side to the center backhand. And the center backhand was rock solid in this match. In my match analysis from post-match, a few days back, we talked about how center only made 3 unforced errors in this entire match on the backhand side. So center, really good job here going cross, not deep, but a little bit of an angle here. Probably would have liked a little bit more depth, but tough to do that when Fritz hits such a deep ball to him right here. So a little angle. Fritz tries to find depth here and does pretty good job with the depth, but the danger of hitting really wide cross. So here's how the danger happens. Fritz hits really wide cross court to center. Center hits the backhand. Center's already over in this corner because Fritz put him in that corner, right? So it goes cross to Fritz's backhand, and this is one of the most common patterns in pro tennis. So practice this all that you can if you're working on your own game. But because I'm already over in this corner, if Fritz hits cross court again and doesn't hit it pretty far cross court, if it lands in the middle third, center has a very easy forehand on the next ball, right? So we know high percentage shot for Fritz here is cross. He could go line, but cross is high percentage. If he doesn't quite get there, center is well positioned to take advantage of any bad aim on this next backhand. And Fritz doesn't quite get it far enough over, right? And look at what center's doing, lining up the forehand. And now he tees off, right? He's like, oop, you made a little mistake there on accident. I'm going to rip the forehand, and I'm going to go big, deep angle here. Big target still, but we're in zone 3. And now, Taylor, I've got you on your back foot, and I'm trying to get you to make a mistake somehow, some way. Fritz, very solid on the backhand, though. Look at what Taylor's doing here. We know he's going cross court there. We can see he's going cross court because of 2 things. Number 1, his contact is really, really far out in front of his body. And number 2, look at the angle of his racket at contact right here. Look at the direction it's pointed in. Clearly, he's going cross court. So let's see it. And he does. Fritz makes one of the biggest mistakes, though, that you can make in tennis. This is another tactical mistake you can make at the highest level that you want to be careful that you don't make. Fritz is trying to avoid, going down the line with his shot or hitting to the middle. So he does the best he can to get it cross court. The problem in this situation is Fritz creates a big angle for center and hits into a small target with a shot that is very weak. It has no power, no spin, because he was reaching for the backhand, right? So he can't get anything on it. So now, because he's made this mistake, center has every option in the world that he possibly wants. Center can go small target down the line. He can go small target cross court. He can go short angle cross court. He's got everything working for him because Fritz's recovery position with his footwork on the other side of the court is about as big on the court right now as it can possibly be. So let's see what center does. Spanks it down the line for the winner. Easy winner right there. So again, Fritz made a couple mistakes here. Center stayed big targets most of the time. The first mistake that Fritz made on accident was this backhand right here. Accidentally went a little bit more to the middle of the court, which allowed center to step around right here and get hyper aggressive and get that zone 3 depth. The next mistake that he made following that panic shot there was on the stretch here. He tried to go cross court and he opened up too much of an angle for Sinner, hit a weak ball, and that means Fritz's recovery position over here is gigantic. Sinner again can go here, here, no problem, very easily. Hits the rifle down the line, and that's the point. Let's move on to the next point now. All right, guys, before we jump into the 6-point now, I want to talk about something that I came up with a long time ago now that we've been using on this channel for 5+ years, and that's what I call a counter. A counter has 3 different types of variations. You have a regular counter where you neutralize a powerful shot from your opponent when you're playing defense, you get back to neutral. Then we have counter winners where you're on defense and you're able to hit a winner from a defensive position. And then we have counter damage where your opponent gets you on defense, you counter them by hitting an aggressive shot yourself that does damage to them and puts them on defense on the next shot. So in this match, I kept track of the counter stats, and what we had for the counter totals was pretty interesting. If we look at counter damage, we had Sinner at 9 and Fritz actually at 12, so he did more counter damage than Sinner did in this match. For counter winners, we had Sinner at 1 and we had Fritz at 5. And then for counter neutralized, we had Sinner at 10 and Fritz at 0. So if you look at the totals in this match, Sinner actually had 20 total counters compared to Fritz's 17, so he won the counter battle, which should be expected because we view him as the better mover. But let's look at some points now where Sinner countered Fritz really well in this match. All right, so before we break it down, let's let it play once in real time. Sinner near side serving, Fritz. Pretty darn good return right there, right? Sinner a little defense 2 times in a row here, fending off Fritz's power, backhand cross hard. Kind of, switches things around on Fritz, big forehand angle, and then Fritz makes the mistake. Let's go ahead and let's break this point down. Now, this is a really interesting point overall. All right, so again, Sinner serving right here to Fritz. Second serve into the body. Fritz doing a good job here, taking the backhand, very strong on the backhand side. I don't think his backhand is as good as Sinner's backhand, but it's still a very quality shot. He's really good on that side. Just a little less topspin than Sinner hits on that side. So really quality deep return here. This is exactly what you want. And Fritz also, we talked about that middle third return. Fritz had a ton of them himself. I think he was 62% as well, or 60+% in this match for middle third returns like this. So he does it right at Sinner's feet. Sinner trying to back up off the serve right here, right? And when you're trying to back off and your weight's going backwards, that's when we tend to hit weak returns. Sinner, though, here, pretty darn good job. I mean, look at that. He's basically just flicking this and somehow finding a way to get that thing deep cross court in zone 3. I think the biggest thing that's changed doing this analysis in the last 5 years, and I know pros watch this channel and they watch these breakdowns, I think a lot of pros have really been practicing flicking balls from these deep zone 3 shots and still trying to get their own depth on their own shots, because I'm seeing a lot of improvement from the players doing that exact thing, executing that tactic, and I think a lot of people have taken that kind of from Djokovic's playbook. He's sort of the master of getting really deep returns in zone 3. And a lot of guys have worked on those specific skills and copied that skill set from Novak, and they're all doing it really well now. So Fritz here, though, forehand off the back foot. I mean, this is just kind of crazy. If you look at this, Sinner hits the return deep. Fritz is on his back foot completely with his weight going backwards, probably 6 to 8 feet behind the baseline right now. And what does he do off that shot? Something super low percentage. Small target cross zone 3, which is incredible. And again, in this situation, we've talked about this in the past too. Anytime you're able to hit a small target deep in zone 3 with a lot of aggression, that will usually get your opponent here, which is Sinner, to make a mistake or hit a ball short. But let's see what Jannik does with that double whammy from Fritz. Nope. He's able to hit deep in zone 3 himself and counter that, which is incredible, and do a little counter damage off of Fritz's incredible shot. So again, these defensive skills are just kind of getting taken to a new level, what guys are able to do. He does counter damage here, and the reason we know it's counter damage here, he's got Fritz moving from this side of the court over to this side, and we can see by the way Fritz follows through really high in this position right here. That follow-through signals to me that Fritz is having to lift up on the ball, so he's damaged by Sinner's shot, and he's having to go into a little bit of a defensive shot mode right here. So let's see what Fritz's ball does. Yep, very defensive, very short, very floaty to this side. And now Sinner has gone from defense on the first ball, extreme defense on the second ball, to stepping up into the court, delivering his body weight forward, and trying to do damage himself. Get aggressive. There we go, right? The first look Sinner gets, he is going to rail anything short in the court and try to get aggressive with it. He's got Fritz. This is a smart play by Sinner. He's got Fritz pretty far behind the baseline. So when we've got players pinned back behind the baseline like this from the previous deep shot we hit, the other part of the courts, the shorter part of the courts, are now available to hit angles and try to angle them off before they can run those balls down. So that's exactly what Sinner's doing. He's going to take the short angle, seeing how deep Fritz is in the court, takes it. Fritz on the complete stretch right here, right? Big defense from Taylor going to the slice. Now, there's a couple things that Sinner can do when he's got Fritz going to the slice. He can either start to move forward, looking for a high volley, or he can move his feet around here, more than likely, and take an inside out or inside in forehand ground stroke. Let's see what he elects to do. He's going for the forehand, right? He's like, not coming to the net, not super comfortable up there yet. I'm going to spank the forehand. We can see by the position of Sinner's body here, he's going inside out clearly with this forehand, and he does. Still hits the big target just inside of the small target. He has Fritz on the complete scramble, and that finishes off the point. But just a really interesting point from Sinner. Really incredible defensive skills. Again, starting right here, defending this incredible Fritz return that was deep in zone 3. Gets it deep back himself. Fritz spanks a double whammy ball. And what I mean by that is it's a small target and it's in zone 3. Those are really rare shots and they usually end up winning you the point. But Sinner here, again, defends it incredibly well, finds his own zone 3 depth, and ends up coming back to win this point. Let's move on to the next point now. All right, so let's let this point play once in real time before we break it down. Fritz serving this time near side. Body serve. Sinner steps around a crank. Fritz, good backhand. Sinner, really good backhand. Good depth from Fritz right there. More depth. Small target. Inside out forehand from Fritz on the run. Short ball. Drop shot from Sinner. Fritz comes up. Forehand air on the volley, and that was a really big point in the third set right there too. So we'll just go back for a second here, guys. We'll look at this thing and break it down again. Fritz serving on the near side, kick serve again. You can see by the toss location right here, it's a kick. It's not behind his head this far, but maybe above the head and out in front of the court here. Obvious kick right into the body. Sinner returning right from deep in zone 5 right here. Second serve, steps around, hits the ball, returns it short a little bit here in zone 2, so Fritz doesn't really have to back up too much to receive this. Hits the deep backhand here to Sinner. Sinner, great job again, just getting his body really low to receive the ball, low center of gravity to control the ball. Sinner hits pretty deep here, zone 3. Fritz setting up comfortably. Fritz, though, right? Man, look at that depth. Incredible. The only thing Fritz could do better with these balls is hit them a little bit heavier. They're a little bit flatter, and it doesn't really work against Sinner. It's not that effective hitting flat like that. Sinner's rock solid on the backhand side, so Sinner does a great job here, right? Just defending that, countering the depth of Fritz, because this Fritz ball kind of got Jannik a little bit uncomfortable right here. We can see a little bit of uncomfortableness at the contact, fighting the contact a little bit. But then again, look what Sinner does, counters it, kind of counter neutralizes, goes really deep and gets Fritz moving around, and Fritz really lifts. Look at the follow through from Fritz right here. Fritz really has to lift with that reverse forehand. So that depth from Sinner got to him, okay? But Fritz, double whammy ball again, right? Small target to the widest part of the court. We have to be careful when we hit these types of balls, because if you don't hit it hard and it's kind of a weaker shot, we talked about that earlier, you're opening up angles right now for your opponent, and they can do some serious damage to you if you don't do enough with that ball. So Sinner goes cross, but it's a little bit short. Fritz steps around to spank the forehand. Does it. Look at that. Zone 3, almost a small target with a lot of pace. Sinner here on defense. You can see he's back there getting ready to defend off of his back foot, really far behind the baseline, but does an incredible job of countering that Fritz depth and that Fritz shot once again, right? And we can see he takes it from this deep position and then directs down the line, which is really tough to do off the ball, that Fritz right here. So again, Fritz cranks this forehand deep and hard with a lot of spin. Center off the back foot, directs it really well down the line. Now Fritz is on the dead run, scrambling from one side of the court to the other, and Sinner's looking for the opportunity. Sinner's already moved from this position where he hit from. He's moved over to here, and he's expecting a forehand either here or here, and then he's expecting to get back on offense with that shot as well, and that's what he gets. And right here, Sinner knew it was coming, but right here, he's going into the drop shot. The question is, can Fritz cover the drop shot while seeing that position from pretty far behind the baseline? Is not known to be the most fleet of foot guy. There's the drop. Fritz runs forward, scrambles. You can see, though, Fritz did a pretty good job of getting to this, but lost some balance here. He could have been a step or two closer to that shot, which makes it tough to control the shot once you get there if you don't have the balance. Sinner sneaks in, and then Fritz misses the volley. So, again, some really good counter skills from Sinner in this point. He showed that throughout the match. He can get a step or two quicker, I believe, in his forward movement as well as his side-to-side movement, and that'll make his defense even tougher going into the 2025 season. Let's move on to the next point now. So before we go into the next point, guys, we talked a lot about the zones earlier on in this video, right? Zones 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Sinner had a really interesting tactic we talked about in the second set with his return of serve position going back to zone 5. But we also noticed that in this match that Sinner hit about 30% of his shots total from zone 5, not just the return of serves. So he also started backing up playing some of these baseline points against Fritz, while Fritz was in zone 5 just 15% of the time. So Sinner spent about double the amount of time in zone 5 total that Fritz did. Let's jump into some points and look at that positioning now. All right, so let's let this point play once in real time before we break it down. Fritz serving near side, Sinner way back right in zone 5. There's the return. Fritz, hyper aggressive, more aggression from Fritz. He's like, if you're going to stand that far back, Jannik, I'm going to paste balls. So that point ended there with a Fritz air cross court. So let's just jump in now. Let's break it down, guys. But again, Fritz serving here near side. Look at where Sinner is. He's back by the back wall, returning this serve, right? Adjusted his position quite a bit in this match. Fritz, pretty darn good serve. So hits a pretty good spot, fairly close to the center line. This is a first serve situation. But Sinner, right, reaches it comfortably because he's so far behind the baseline. He's got plenty of time to get over there, and he's got great reach. So he hits the forehand, but accidentally hits this forehand a little bit short here in zone 2. Fritz moving over comfortably, really loads his body. So for you juniors, your coaches and players at home, look at the load from the legs of Fritz right here. Really going to throw his body into this shot. He's got good leg on his forehand side, a really good live arm, right? So from this position, big shot. Boom. I mean, that was a rifle. The only problem, I guess, with it, a little bit short and not enough angle. So with Sinner standing this far behind the baseline, this shot could have been more effective had Fritz created a little bit more of an angle here to really get Jannik off the court, but not enough angle with that power. But look at Sinner over here, man, with the athleticism, playing from zone 5. Full slide into the forehand on defense, maintaining his balance and being a guy, again, 6'3" or so. Really tall doing this, anchoring his hips down and controlling the ball pretty well. The shot's a little bit short, right? It's in zone 1. So we see Fritz lining up the backhand, getting ready to crank this thing, saying, Jannik, you got to do better than that, okay? So he changes direction and hits zone 2, almost zone 3 right here, moving Sinner from one side of the court to the other side of the court, which can cause errors or short balls, right? But Sinner here, reaching just a little bit for this backhand, right? He's not in perfect position to hit it, but he controls his shots well, even when things aren't exactly perfect with the spots. So from there, Sinner, unbelievable angle considering he was reaching for that shot, right? And, I guess if you're going to do this, you can do this on your opponent's serve game, so you can take a little bit of risk, but hits a small target right here. Fritz was not expecting that. Fritz came from here inside the court, right? And he wasn't looking for, Sinner to be hitting a deep ball off this or any type of angled ball. But Sinner, small target, look at Fritz, scrambling, backing up with the footwork. Now he's on the dead run, and Sinner has exactly what he wants, which is Taylor Fritz on the full stretch, hitting a slice, which is not something Fritz wants to hit. And look at Sinner. As soon as Sinner hit that angle, watch what he does. So Sinner comes from here, hits the angle, And he knows that on defense, Fritz is going to probably play this slice cross. So center sitting over here waiting for a forehand. And unfortunately for Fritz, tried to control it and just couldn't quite control it and made the error there just a little bit wide. But center was stepping around and getting ready to crank the forehand anyway. Let's move on to the last point now, guys. All right, we'll let it play once in real time before we get into it. Fritz serving again. Second serve out wide. Center backhand. Fritz, big forehand down the line. Fritz, huge forehand cross, another huge forehand cross, 2 consecutive zone 3 balls, another zone 3 ball, a zone 2 winner right there. I mean, that's incredible that it took that much to end the point, but let's go ahead and break it down now. So again, Fritz right here serving, center in the back in zone 5. Again, obvious kick serve just with the toss. You can see the toss here, toss really arcing like this. So he's going for the kick. Little arch in the back, a tiny arch right there. He's going up. The way the racket goes up, you can also see the kick coming. There it is, the backhand. Center returning from really far behind the baseline there in zone 5 on this particular one. The mistake center makes in this point, right, trying to play from zone 5, he's hitting too short into zone 2 where Fritz doesn't have to back up much to hit these shots. Center defending. Fritz goes down the line. Center still in zone 5 here. Center accidentally hits short here in zone number 1, middle third of the court. Fritz loading up the body right here. Again, really loading his legs, really trying to get aggressive on this shot right here. Spanks it deep. I mean, almost a double whammy, so almost small target zone 3. It's very close, but definitely a zone 3 ball right here, keeping center back. And the key for center to get out of this situation is, can center hit a deep ball back in zone 3? Can't do it. Again, zone 1 or zone 2 ball here, pretty darn short. Fritz looking to step around, smacks another forehand that lands almost in the exact same spot, zone 3. And that zone 3 ball forces center to stay back in zone 5 to try to defend these shots to give himself time. Again, hits another one short here. So he's just not getting out of this pattern because he's hitting too many balls. Look at all these green dots, all short balls to Fritz, who's just loading his body over and over again, looking to spank forehands. So Fritz down the line, zone 3 depth again. Center still really far behind the baseline. Fritz finally, right? A little bit more of an angle, and we talked about this. When an opponent's really far behind the baseline, if hitting deep to them is not forcing them to make mistakes and you can't put them away, if they're still standing really far behind the baseline, now it's time to take a ball closer to off the court with the angle and really force their hand and see if they can come up with an athletic play. Center couldn't get to that ball, and there's the winner from Fritz. All right, guys, that wraps it up for our 2024 Men's U.S. Open Finals Deep Dive Analysis between Jannik Sinner and Taylor Fritz. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something today, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. I'll see you next time.